We just came down that beautiful sidewalk. Wow, look at that. And here's our Mass site for this morning at the Mount of Beatitudes. Everybody's getting settled in. The priests are getting ready. And this is the view that we have looking out over the Sea of Galilee. Back over to the city of Tiberias where we just came from. And we're ready for Mass.
Well, since we're waiting on everybody, why don't the four of us take a picture together?
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. When he saw the crowds, he went up this mountain, and after he had sat down, his disciples came to him. He began to teach them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the land. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the clean of heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they insult you and persecute you and utter every kind of evil against you falsely because of me. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
You know, I used to work in high school ministry. Actually, Bill's wearing the insignia of my school that I worked in for 5 years, and I always talk about confession, and I will continue to talk about confession as we go here, because I love it, and I think that we meet such the intimacy and the mercy of Jesus. But one of the funny things that I would do is I would hand the kids, well, it wasn't funny, it was funny how the kids reacted. I would hand the kids the examination of conscience, and they would look through it, and they would see what their sins were. You know, it has the commandment, and then like things underneath the commandment, so they could see what's right and what's wrong. And it was always funny how, like, teenagers, they'll rejoice if they don't commit a sin. Like, oh, awesome, I didn't steal anything. They kind of would be like, good for you, kiddo. That's not Christian perfection. That's not. But it's a step along the way, right? Especially in that stage in their life, in their formation. But the Lord calls us on to that which is higher. St. Paul says that the law is fulfilled in love. The law is fulfilled in love. And Jesus calls us to that which is beyond the law in the Sermon on the Mount. Steve talked about that a little bit earlier today. He mentioned that Jesus makes commentary on the law, but he calls us to the higher standard of the law. And that standard is fulfilled in love. And Christ calls us to that love that he has, right? Our standard of how we ought to act is Jesus. He says, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I love you." So we hear in the Sermon on the Mount, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. What is the poor in spirit? The poor in spirit are those who do not trust in themselves. Those who trust in the Lord, right? So important to not to be focused on myself and my own resources and what I can do and my own self-reliance, to be focused on him who is the one who is worthy of my trust. Each of these Beatitudes bespeaks a disposition within us. But even in the rest of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says things like, "You have heard that it was said, you should not commit adultery. Well, I say to you, you must, anyone who commits adultery in his heart, even in his heart." Jesus is calling us to that which is beyond the normal, beyond that which is given in the law. And to give you an example of this, how the law is fulfilled in love, let's take a married couple. Here we go. You guys look very married, okay? So let's say there is a commandment in the law that says, "Thou shalt not murder thy wife." Would you agree that is a good commandment? Good. All right, now, Now, David, do you need that commandment?
I shouldn't.
You shouldn't. Aggressive. David, why shouldn't you need that commandment?
Because I love her.
Because you love her, right? You love her, you would never want to kill her. You should never want to kill her. Okay? But the law is fulfilled in love, right? And so the more and more we love, as Christ teaches us to love with that giving of self kind of love, the more and more we don't need the commandments. It's not that the commandments don't matter. It's not that we can throw the commandments out. Okay? They represent the bare minimum. But Christianity calls us to that which is beyond the commandments. In our reading it said, consider your own calling. And I love that line. It's from St. Paul. He always says, consider your calling. Or he'll say, remember who you are. In fact, that's the opening line of the Catechism on Morality. It says, Christian, recognize your dignity. If you think about what is your call as Christians, your call is to be a saint. Your call is nothing less than to be a saint. And I'm not talking about just the little person on the holy card. You know, we all got those First Communion books. You remember those with the little boy or girl in the front? And the little boy was so perfect. He had blonde hair. And it was all like, I don't have hair like him. You know, it's all like perfect to one side. He's looking up like this. Okay? That's not being a saint. Being a saint is a matter of the heart and a matter of the will. So the more and more we join ourselves to the life of Christ, the more and more we learn to love like him, and to love like him in our own lives, in our own families, in the places he has put us, the better off we will be as Christians. And just to make a point on that, a lady went to Billy Graham after one of his conferences, and sometimes he really had some wisdom, and she said, you know, Reverend Graham, I really feel called to bring the gospel to the whole world. I feel called to go and preach, but I have 12 children. And Billy Graham replied, well, great. God has already provided you a congregation. And that's the reality. That sometimes our places of our homes, of our families, of our workplaces, they are the places in which we are called to proclaim the gospel.